My wife asked for an open marriage to be with her boss, he rejected her, got her fired, and then she begged me to take her back. Claire and I have been married for 15 years, and for most of that time, I truly believed we had a strong, steady marriage. We've got 2 kids, Jane, who's 13, and Martin, who's 10, and I honestly thought we were doing okay. Maybe not perfect, but solid. Claire's been working at this company for the past 3 years. Her boss, Andrew, is in his early 40s, married, and has kids too. He always came across as just another corporate guy. But a couple of weeks ago, something about the way Claire acted started to change. She came home from work one night looking off. Not angry, not sad, just distant. I could tell something was on her mind, but I didn't want to press. Then I noticed she was glued to her phone more than usual. She'd look at it and smile in this way that felt private, like she was in on some joke I didn't know about. That's when my stomach started to tighten. When I asked if everything was okay, she brushed it off, said work was just stressful. But her voice had this strange, jittery quality, like she was forcing calm. That wasn't like her. Then last Tuesday night, after the kids had gone to bed, she told me she needed to talk. Serious talk. We sat down in the living room, and I could already tell something big was coming. Her hands were shaking, and she kept spinning her wedding ring around her finger. My first thought was that something horrible had happened, someone died or she'd gotten bad medical news. But then she took this long breath and said she'd been thinking a lot about our relationship. She said she felt like we were growing apart. And then, she dropped the real bomb. She wanted us to consider opening the marriage. At first, I thought I'd misheard her. My mind went blank. I asked her what she meant, and that's when she told me she had feelings for someone else and thought it would be healthier for both of us if we explored other relationships, while still staying married. The second she said someone else, I knew she had a specific person in mind. And honestly, it didn't take me long to connect the dots. The way she'd been talking about Andrew lately, the way she lit up whenever she mentioned him, it all clicked. I asked her straight out if it was Andrew. She got defensive fast. Said it didn't matter who it was, that this was about us and keeping our marriage alive. But her face turned bright red and she couldn't meet my eyes, which told me everything I needed to know. I told her I wasn't interested in opening our marriage. That if she wanted to be with someone else, we might as well call it what it is, a separation. That's when she started backpedaling. Said she didn't want a divorce, that she still loved me, that she wanted to keep the family together, but she also couldn't ignore these new feelings she had. As she talked, it became clear that she'd been planning this conversation for a while. She'd already run through the logic in her head. This wasn't a random moment of weakness, it was something she'd decided on. She started talking about boundaries and guidelines and how a lot of couples make this work. But all I could picture was my kids finding out their mom was dating some guy while still married to me. I asked her if it had already gotten physical. She swore it hadn't, but there was a pause before she said it. Just long enough to make me doubt every word. The rest of the conversation dragged on for almost 2 hours. By the end, I was exhausted and numb. She was crying, saying she never meant to hurt me and just wanted both of us to be happy. But all I heard was her asking me to sign off on her cheating, just so she could live with a clean conscience. I told her I needed time to process. She nodded like she understood, then hugged me tight and whispered that she hoped I'd give it real thought because she genuinely believed this could make things better. I barely slept that night. Just stared up at the ceiling, thinking back over our 15 years together, wondering how I didn't see this coming. What had I missed? And then the next morning, she was in the kitchen, acting like everything was fine. Cheerful. Cooking breakfast. Chatting with the kids about their school projects like we hadn't just had the most brutal conversation of our marriage. I was a zombie at work. Couldn't focus. One of my coworkers asked if I was okay. I must have looked like hell. I wanted to tell someone, just say it out loud, but I couldn't. I felt too embarrassed, too ashamed. Like maybe I'd done something wrong. Maybe I wasn't enough for her anymore. When I got home that night, Claire had gone all out. She made my favorite dinner. She was touchy, overly affectionate, laughing a little too hard at everything I said. I could tell she was trying to soften me up. And honestly, it felt manipulative as hell. At dinner, Jane even asked why Mom seemed so happy. Claire smiled and said she just had a good day at work. That almost made me lose it because I knew exactly why she was glowing. After the kids went upstairs, she brought it up again. Said she'd been thinking about it all day and believed this could actually bring us closer. She had research-ready links and articles about open marriages, success rates, couples who supposedly ended up happier. But while she talked, all I could think was, she's already emotionally checked out. And now she wants my permission to take it further. I told her again, firmly this time, that I wasn't okay with it. That if she wanted to chase someone else, we'd have to separate. She started crying again, accused me of being closed-minded, said I wasn't even trying to see her side. And then she threw in something that really pissed me off. She said she thought I'd be more open-minded, especially since I'd always supported her career. The way she framed it, as if sleeping with her boss was somehow linked to professional growth, made me feel like she either didn't grasp how insane that sounded, or she thought I was too dumb to notice the manipulation. I told her I was going to stay at a hotel nearby for a few days just to clear my head. That's when she started to panic, said I was overreacting, begged me not to go, followed me around the house while I packed a bag, insisting we could fix this if I just hear her out again. She kept saying she loved me, that none of this changed anything between us. But in my mind, I kept thinking, if you really loved me, you wouldn't be asking to sleep with someone else. The kids were upstairs, still working on homework, totally unaware their parents' world was crumbling underneath them. I kissed them goodnight and told them I had to go out of town for work. That lie felt like a punch to the gut, but I couldn't bring myself to tell them the truth. Jane looked at me and asked if Mom was okay. She said she looked upset. I forced a smile and said Mom was just tired. That everything would be fine. Truth was, I didn't know if anything would ever be fine again. I drove to a hotel 20 minutes away, checked in, and sat on the bed staring at the wall. It all felt surreal, like I was living someone else's life. My marriage, my home, my family, it was all slipping through my fingers, and I had no idea how long this had been happening behind my back. About an hour later, there was a knock on the door. I didn't even need to check the peephole, I already knew it was her. Claire was standing there, crying, mascara streaked down her cheeks. She told me we needed to talk, that I couldn't just run from this. I let her in, not because I wanted to, but because I didn't want to make a scene in the hallway. Letting Claire into the hotel room was a mistake the second I opened the door. She immediately launched into this monologue about how she never should have brought up the open marriage idea. Said she didn't really want that after all. But then, in the same breath, admitted she couldn't promise her feelings for the other person would just disappear. That maybe, just maybe, we could find a middle ground. When I asked what kind of compromise she had in mind, she said maybe she could keep an emotional connection with him, but stay physically faithful to me. I actually laughed out loud. Not because it was funny, but because it was so absurd. I told her flat out that what she was describing wasn't a compromise. It was her asking for permission to keep cheating, just without the physical part. And yes, emotional cheating is still cheating. She didn't take that well. Accused me of being unfair. Said at least she'd been honest with me instead of going behind my back like most people would. Like she expected a gold star for admitting she wanted to betray me instead of doing it in secret. That moment right there told me just how far gone she really was. We argued for another hour. She kept trying to reframe it, kept tossing out new angles like maybe if she worded it differently I'd eventually say yes. But with every new suggestion, it became more and more obvious, she wanted to be with this guy. She just didn't want to lose the comfort and stability of the life we'd built together. Eventually, I told her she needed to go. I'd call her the next day to talk about what came next. She cried and begged me not to end things. Said she couldn't lose me or the kids. But then I asked if she'd be willing to completely cut contact with Andrew and ask for a transfer to a different department. That's when the mask slipped. She said that wasn't fair. That she shouldn't have to sacrifice her job or career over this. And right then, I knew without a doubt that she'd already chosen him. Everything else was just her trying to keep her safety net intact. I'm writing this now from my hotel bed because I can't sleep. My mind won't shut off. Part of me still wants to save the marriage, but another part of me knows it might already be too late. Maybe I'm just dragging out the inevitable. I keep thinking about our kids, about how this will shape their idea of love and commitment. I wonder if I should just swallow my pride and make it work for their sake. But I also don't want them growing up thinking this twisted dynamic is what a marriage should look like. I don't know. Right now, everything feels upside down and I'm just trying to figure out which way is up. Update, 2 months later. I figured I should post an update, especially after all the support and advice I got. I can't even explain how much the messages helped. These last 2 months have been the hardest of my life. After my original post, I stayed at that hotel for a full week. Claire and I had a few more conversations during that time, but every one of them felt like running in circles. She kept saying she wanted to fix things. Kept insisting she loved me and didn't want our marriage to end. But every time I brought up the one condition I needed to even consider working things out, cutting ties with Andrew, she always had an excuse. She said they worked too closely. That people at her job would notice and it could hurt her professionally. That she couldn't risk losing her job over something emotional. I told her she should have thought about that before getting emotionally tangled up with her married boss. She said I was being unrealistic. That you can't control who you develop feelings for. Eventually, I moved back into the house. Not because I forgave her. I missed my kids. And I couldn't keep living out of a suitcase. But I made it crystal clear, we were separated. We might be under the same roof, but this wasn't a marriage anymore. We told the kids that mom and dad were going through something difficult, but we both loved them no matter what. I could see how confused and scared they were. They didn't understand it fully, but they knew something was wrong. Claire, meanwhile, acted like everything was fine. She kept suggesting family nights, movies, dinners out, but it all felt like she was playing a part. Just going through the motions to look normal in front of the kids. I hated how suspicious I'd become. I started watching her closely, checking if she was texting him, listening for clues in her phone calls. She kept taking work calls in the bedroom with the door closed. I asked her about it. She snapped, said it was just work stuff. But her tone was defensive, and that told me more than her words ever could. Then about 3 weeks ago, she came home looking like someone had died. Barely said a word through dinner. Kept glancing at me like she was trying to build up the courage to say something. After the kids went to bed, she finally broke the silence. She told me she got fired. At first, I couldn't even process what she was saying. Fired? What? How? She started crying and said she'd made a huge mistake. That she'd approached Andrew about their relationship and he'd shut her down. Hard. Said he was committed to his wife and that what she was suggesting was inappropriate. And then, apparently, he reported her to HR. It turns out the whole thing, the fantasy she'd been chasing, was just that. A fantasy. Andrew didn't want her. He probably never did. And now she'd blown up our marriage chasing a man who wasn't even interested. I asked what, exactly, she'd said that led to her being fired. She dodged most of the question. But from what I could gather, she confessed her feelings and basically tried to pitch a relationship. That alone was enough to get her shown the door. Now she's unemployed, rejected, and spiraling, and somehow expecting me to pick up the emotional pieces. She keeps saying how stupid she feels. How she should have appreciated me. How she never should have risked what we had. But the more she talks, the clearer it becomes she's not grieving our marriage. She's grieving him. And honestly, that makes it hurt even more. What's really been messing with me is how she started calling me selfish. Because I'm not rushing to comfort her through this mess she created. Like I owe her emotional support after she tried to replace me. Last week, I went on a ski trip with my brother. We'd planned it months ago, before any of this happened. When I got back, Claire was furious. Said she couldn't believe I left her alone when she was going through the worst time of her life. Accused me of being cruel. Said a real husband would have cancelled the trip to stay and support his wife. I told her I'm not her husband in any real sense anymore. She made that choice when she decided she wanted someone else. I'm not her emotional support animal. I'm not responsible for helping her deal with the wreckage she caused. And then she said something that made my blood boil. She said that kind of selfish attitude is exactly what pushed her to look for emotional connection elsewhere in the first place. That was it. I had to walk out of the room before I said something I couldn't take back. The worst part of this entire mess is how it's starting to bleed into my kids' lives, and I hate it. Just the other day, Jane asked me why I was being so cold to her mom, especially now that she's clearly upset about losing her job. And Martin's been asking if we're getting divorced. Apparently, a classmate told him his parents used to argue a lot before they split, and now he's connecting the dots. Claire's been crying in front of them more often too. I can already see how much it's affecting both of them. They're confused. They don't understand what's really going on. And I know, on the surface, it looks like I'm being harsh while she's the one falling apart. Yesterday, Jane actually pulled me aside. She said her mom told her she lost her job because of office politics and that she really needs support right now. Then she asked why I was treating her mom like this. It nearly broke me. I wanted to tell Jane everything, to explain the real reason her mother lost her job. But how do you dump something that heavy on a 13-year-old? It wouldn't be fair. So instead, I told her that sometimes adult relationships are messy and complicated, and that I was doing my best to handle things. But then she hit me with, maybe you could try a little harder. Mom's really sorry, and everyone deserves a second chance. Hearing my daughter ask me to forgive her mom for nearly blowing up our family for some fantasy with her boss, it's one of the hardest things I've ever had to sit through. I know Jane doesn't really grasp what she's asking of me, but it still stung. It feels like everyone expects me to just accept this and move on. Now Claire's been talking about going to marriage counseling. Says she's willing to do whatever it takes to fix what she broke. But the timing feels off, like she's only doing this because things with Andrew didn't work out. If he'd shown any interest in her, I'm certain she would have walked away from me without a second thought. And now that her backup plan collapsed, I'm supposed to pretend like none of this ever happened? I've been seriously considering divorce, but I keep hesitating. Mostly because of the kids. My brother says I should file. He thinks what Claire did was unforgivable, whether it was physical or not. But my sister thinks I should try counseling, at least for the children's sake. Honestly, I feel completely stuck. I can't move forward, but I can't go back to how things were either. It's like I'm frozen in this miserable in-between place, and I know I can't stay here much longer. It's not fair to anyone. What I really wish I could figure out is whether Claire's remorse is real, or if she just regrets that her plan didn't work out the way she wanted. Update 2, 3 months later. I've been putting off writing this, probably because putting it into words makes it all feel more final. But I know I owe everyone who's followed this story an update. The support and messages I've gotten have honestly carried me through some of my lowest moments. Especially when I felt like maybe I was the one losing my mind. After the last update, I spent a lot of time thinking about the kind of life I wanted for myself and for my kids. And I realized I couldn't keep living in this constant state of resentment and uncertainty. It was slowly eating me alive. Claire kept pushing for marriage counseling. She kept saying we could rebuild something even stronger. But every time we talked, it felt like she was asking me to forget something I know I'll never be able to erase from my mind. Then, about a month ago, the final straw happened. I came home one afternoon and noticed her laptop was open on the kitchen counter. A notification popped up from some messaging app I'd never seen before. I wouldn't have thought much of it, but something in my gut told me to check. And sure enough, there it was, weeks of messages between her and Andrew. I took screenshots right away. Figured I might need them if I ended up filing for divorce. Most of the messages were Claire pouring her heart out, apologizing for what happened at work, telling him how real her feelings were, begging him to give things another chance. Meanwhile, his replies were short and clear, asking her to stop contacting him, saying he was committed to his marriage, and that there was nothing to explore. And all I could think was, this woman is still chasing him, still reaching out to him, while telling me she wanted to fix our marriage, while telling Jane that she was sad because of office politics. That night, I confronted her. At first, she tried to deny it, said I must have misunderstood. But when I showed her the screenshots, she broke down. She admitted it, said she just wanted some kind of closure, that she couldn't just shut off her feelings overnight, but thought that if she could wrap things up with him, maybe she could fully recommit to me. That was it for me. Even after losing her job, even with divorce looming, she was still more invested in Andrew than she was in making things right with me. I told her I was done, that I was going to file. And the look on her face, it was like she never actually believed I'd go through with it. Like she assumed I'd just keep hanging around, waiting for her to figure herself out. Last week, I met with a divorce attorney and got the paperwork started. Yesterday, I told Claire in person that it was official, I was filing for divorce. I waited until the kids were at school. I didn't want them to hear any of it. She broke down immediately, cried, begged me to reconsider, swore up and down that she was finally ready to fight for our marriage. That she'd been an idiot. That Andrew had meant nothing. That she'd been going through some kind of midlife crisis and didn't even recognize herself anymore. Then she asked me something that absolutely gutted me. What am I supposed to tell the kids? How do I explain that our family is falling apart? And for the first time in a while, I actually saw fear in her eyes. Real fear. About how Jane and Martin would see her. About what this would mean for them. I told her we'd figure out how to talk to them together. That we wouldn't lie, but we also wouldn't dump everything on them either. They deserve honesty, even if it's filtered through love. She kept pleading with me. Asked if we could try separation again, officially this time, instead of going straight into divorce. Said we owed it to the kids. But I reminded her we had been separated, emotionally and practically, 4 months. And nothing changed. She'd still lied to me. She'd still chased a man who rejected her. There was no trust left. I told her I want our kids to grow up understanding what real love and respect look like. And staying married to someone who tried to cheat and then lied about it? That's not the example I want to set. The hardest part of that last conversation was when she looked me in the eye and asked if there was anything she could do to change my mind. And for a second, I'll admit it, I almost wavered. Because in that moment of desperation, I saw the woman I fell in love with 15 years ago. The one I built a life with. Not the version that lied to me or chased someone else, but the one I used to know. But I told her straight, I don't recognize her anymore. The woman I married wouldn't have made the choices she's made these past few months. And I can't trust someone I no longer feel safe giving my heart or my future to. She cried harder. Said that people mess up, that marriage is supposed to be about forgiveness and working through tough seasons together. But I told her this wasn't just one mistake. It was a series of deliberate decisions, choices she made knowing they could cost her everything. We ended up talking for nearly 3 hours. By the end, we were both emotionally drained. Before she left, she asked if I thought there was any chance of reconciliation someday after she worked on herself, after she proved she'd changed. I told her the truth. I didn't think I'd ever be able to trust her again. And I couldn't keep holding on to false hope while trying to move forward with my life. It wasn't fair to either of us. We haven't told the kids about the divorce yet. We're still trying to figure out the best way to do it. Claire keeps dragging her feet, hoping I'll change my mind if we delay just a little longer. But I know all we're doing is postponing the pain, and Jane and Martin deserve honesty, even if it's going to hurt. The next few months are going to be rough. There's the legal stuff, custody arrangements, and figuring out how to co-parent without dragging each other through the mud. But for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm steering my life again instead of constantly reacting to whatever Claire throws my way. My lawyer says the divorce should go fairly smoothly since we agree on most of the major stuff, but I know things could shift if Claire suddenly decides to fight it. I hate that the kids are going to feel this so deeply. I hate that their lives are being changed because of choices they had no part in. But I honestly believe they'll be better off in a home where they see their dad happy and emotionally healthy, instead of stuck in a toxic dynamic where we all just pretend everything is fine. I've already started looking for a good therapist. I want help processing everything that's happened, and more importantly, I want to make sure I'm approaching fatherhood and co-parenting from the healthiest place possible. I never imagined I'd be 38 and divorced. That wasn't the plan. But here I am, and I'm trying to focus on building a good life for myself and my kids instead of obsessing over the life I thought I was supposed to have. Final update, several months later. This will be the last time I write about all of this. I wanted to give one final update and close the door on this chapter of my life. So many of you have followed my story from the beginning, and I can't thank you enough for your support. It truly got me through. It's been about 8 months since I posted that first message. 6 months since I officially filed for divorce. And just last week, it became final. The process turned out to be a lot messier than my attorney expected. Even after we had agreed on the basics, Claire kept changing her mind, contesting parts of the settlement, pulling back, renegotiating. But eventually, we landed on an agreement that works for everyone. We're sharing custody. Jane and Martin live with me during the week and spend weekends with Claire. So far, that routine has been pretty smooth, and I think the kids are adapting better than I anticipated. Telling them about the divorce was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. We decided to be honest, that their mom had developed feelings for someone else and that we just couldn't work through our differences. Jane took it the hardest. She blamed me at first, said I should have forgiven her mom. But over time, she started to understand that there are some things you can't just get over. Some things leave permanent cracks. Martin didn't understand much of it. He kept asking if there was something he could do to fix it, like maybe if he tried harder, mom and dad would love each other again. That crushed me. Both kids have been seeing a counselor who specializes in helping children deal with divorce. And thankfully, that's made a huge difference. They're still sad. But they're coping. They're adjusting. They're starting to laugh again. Claire struggled a lot, emotionally and financially. She had a hard time finding a new job after being let go. And I think the reality of losing both Andrew and her marriage hit her much harder than she expected. There were times she tried to use the kids to get to me. She'd tell them how lonely she was, how hard it was living alone, how much she missed being a family. Jane used to ask me almost every day if there was any chance we could ever get back together. I had to have some hard, very careful conversations with both kids. I told them that sometimes grown-ups make choices that hurt their families, and that even though mom and dad both love them very much, we just can't be married anymore. I made sure never to trash Claire. That balance, being honest without turning them against their mother, that's been one of the hardest parts of this entire thing. Claire spiraled for a bit after the divorce was finalized. She was lost, overwhelmed, and still chasing closure. She called me in tears more than once, asking if there was a chance we could try again. But I stood firm, too much had happened. There was no going back. About 3 months ago, she finally landed a new job. Since then, she's been doing better. More stable. She stopped bringing up reconciliation, and our communication has shifted to co-parenting only. And honestly, that's been a relief. The kids are settling into the new routine. They still get sad sometimes, still miss the way things used to be, but they're also starting to thrive in their own ways. And that's all I could hope for. As for me, I've been rebuilding. I've been focusing on the kind of man and father I want to be. I started therapy 4 months ago, and it's helped me more than I expected. Not just with understanding Claire's behavior, but with trusting my own instincts again. For so long, I kept wondering if I was the problem, if I wasn't being fair or forgiving enough. But now I see clearly, her actions were not okay. No matter what she told herself. I'm not dating anyone right now. I want to focus on my kids. On healing. But for the first time in a long time, I feel hopeful. I believe I'll find love again someday, with someone who chooses me fully. Thank you to everyone who followed this journey with me. Your words, your advice, your kindness, it mattered. It reminded me I wasn't alone. And to anyone reading this who's going through something similar, I know it feels impossible. I know it feels like your whole world is breaking apart. But you can get through it. You can come out stronger. It just takes time. And the decision to stop surviving and start rebuilding.